Live from the Clairvoyant 2100, it's the Archbishops Update.
Brought to you by Forward Movement and all the extra food that you're going to eat watching the Super Bowl today.
I'm John Chrysostom.
And I'm Thomas Granma. The countdown to Lent Madness 2014 continues to start. 32 days remaining.
Exactly, Thomas. Today is also Super Bowl Sunday.
That's right, John. Later today, the Denver Broncos will take on the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 48.
With Bruno Mars and Red Hot Chili Peppers to do the halftime show, Thomas.
It should be a good game, John. But it is also something else today.
Of course, Thomas. It is the feast of the presentation of Christ in the temple, also known as the purification of the Virgin and Candlemas.
Spot on, John. To mark the occasion, a writer, producer, director, manager, technician, sound editor.
I think they get the idea. He does a lot around here.
Well, you know, Maple Anglican. He has prepared a brief film on the history of Lent Madness.
So, on this, the feast of the presentation, he will give you a presentation.
Cheeky, John. Very cheeky.
Let's roll the clip.
Lent Madness. The internet sensation is about to enter its 5th season. However, few know the true history of this wildly popular online devotion. It all began with the Reverend Tim Skank, the supposedly mild-mannered rector of St. John's Episcopal Church in Hingham, Massachusetts. Tim had just arrived at his new parish on Boston's South Shore in August 2009. While he was quickly integrated into the life of his new parish and community, there was one thing he could not forsake: support for his beloved Baltimore Ravens. His new parish was, not surprisingly, teeming with passionate fans of the New England Patriots. That winter, during the NFL playoffs, an unknown parishioner made a bet with the new rector that the Patriots would beat his Ravens in the AFC wildcard game. Anonymous sources claim that Tim fired back at the parishioner indignantly, proclaiming that not only would the Ravens win, but they would score twice as many points as the Patriots. While the unknown parishioner agreed, the full amount of the wager remains a mystery. When Baltimore won the game 33-14 against the Patriots, Tim was emboldened with newfound confidence. Believing that the Holy Spirit was guiding him, and the Ravens, Tim placed a bet that Baltimore would prevail over the Indianapolis Colts. When the Ravens suffered their devastating 20-3 loss on Saturday, January the 16th, Tim was suddenly in hot water. He now owed a large sum to local Irish mobster Danny the altar boy Costello. Costello, being a good Roman Catholic, other than the whole mobster thing, decided to give the Episcopal priest more time than usual to pay him back. However, Tim's only source of revenue was his small blog, Clergy Confidential, which, upon further review, actually provided no income whatsoever. Tim took the time and prayed on the matter. This being college basketball season, he suddenly realized the solution he needed was at hand. Tim thought of a competition to excite the blogosphere. The concept was to take 32 saints in the calendar of the Episcopal Church and square them off in competition with one another, much like the famed March Madness basketball tournament. With the increased ad revenue coming in, he hoped to pay back Costello. Costello liked the idea and agreed to wait until the end of Lent, but only because he doesn't break kneecaps after Septuagesima Sunday. However, Tim ran into two problems. First, he had to write multiple saint biographies almost every day during Lent, which means his already shabby sermons were even worse. The second problem lay in Rhode Island, with fellow blogging Episcopal priest, the Reverend Scott Gunn. The two priests originally met serving on the Board of Governors of the now defunct Episcopal Life newspaper, having literally bumped into one another and spilling their coffees on each other. Both apologized, and then proceeded to fight over who should be apologizing. During the inaugural season, Scott tried to heavily influence the matches of Lent Madness, so much so that he was referred to as the Lee Atwater of Lent Madness. And if you don't know who that is, he was basically the Karl Rove of the 1980s. With George Herbert's victory over Julian of Norwich, Scott cemented his influence on the competition. Despite Tim's increased blog traffic, the revenues were not nearly enough to cover his gambling debt to Danny, the altar boy Costello. He was faced with having to sell his prized racing ferrets to raise funds. Luckily for Tim, he had friends in high places, so to speak, that he didn't even know he had. Unbeknownst to Tim, the whole of heaven had finally become extremely excited with his competition that allowed people to learn about their lives. The saints in heaven prayed on the matter, and on Good Friday, Danny, the altar boy of Costello, turned himself in to the Massachusetts State Police right after church because he was a good Roman Catholic, other than the whole mobster thing. Costello had destroyed the records of Tim's gambling records, ensuring that no one would ever learn of his shame until this video got released, naturally. Tim swore he would never again do any more gambling, except ferret racing. Lent Madness continued for another season in 2011, being almost entirely run by Tim. However, that season had taken its toll on him, as he had consumed more coffee than the entire city of Helsinki. The interference from his arch-nemesis, Scott Gunn, had also been devastating. Tim was forced into having to shut down Lent Madness. But then an odd thing happened. The hosts and saints in heaven, not wanting the end to come to their beloved contest, began to pray on the matter at hand. The Holy Spirit resolved the matter in a most mysterious way. The publishing group Forward Movement approached Tim about partnering with him so that Lent Madness became an offering by Forward Movement. However, it just so happened that the new executive director of Forward Movement was Tim's arch-nemesis, the Reverend Scott Gunn. Tim, realizing that this was what God wanted him to do, decided to grudgingly work with Scott, and the two formed the Supreme Executive Committee. At the time, Scott and Tim recruited a number of bloggers to assist in writing the daily postings on the saints, thus allowing Tim to have a life during Lent. Using the resources of Forward Movement and social media, the result was a massively increased presence in the 2012 season of Lent Madness. This was not without its problems. Voter fraud reared its ugly head as people tried voting more than once. This was very saddening to the saints in heaven, especially the saints against whom the fraud was being committed, as they wanted Lent Madness to be a clean competition. Second was the appearance of diocese-wide collusion, as the Episcopal Diocese of Hawaii, under their bishop, the Right Reverend Robert Fitzpatrick, came out in force to support the canoncy of Emma, the Dowager Queen of Hawaii. Emma made it all the way to the final, only being defeated by the first witness to the resurrection of the Lord, Mary Magdalene. The third was, well, me. I made some videos mirroring the system of American political attack ads, hoping to influence the outcome of one contest. Regardless of all that, 2012 was a stunning success. Lent Madness 2013 was an even larger success, with the Supreme Executive Committee recruiting more celebrity bloggers and the appearance of 2 archbishops providing commentary via an experimental device clouded in mystery, the Clairvoyatron. With competition for 2014 set to begin on March 6th, the excitement is building both on earth and in heaven. Who'll win the Covenant Golden Halo? Time will tell. Time, and whichever diocese, school, or special saintly interest group can organize most effectively.
A very interesting film, John. And very accurate, I would say.
Let's see what we have for questions, Thomas.
There is one from Kurt TEC with a follow-up by celebrity blogger the revered Megan Castellan. I hope I got that name right.
Is the selfie thing popular in heaven? Are heaven selfies also called icons? Because that would be awesome.
The whole idea of taking a picture of yourself and your friends with your smartphone hasn't caught on yet in heaven. Thankfully.
And while in some Christian circles icons might be viewed as gateways to the saints, what we look like in heaven is so radically different you won't believe it when you see it. Unless, of course, you end up in that other place.
We will release our next video on Septuagesima Sunday, February 16th, when we start weekly videos for the Lent Madness countdown.
But until then,
remember to go to lentmadness.org
and vote for your favorite saints.